Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another glorious little stage dive here from Multimedia side. It's exciting to see some familiar faces here joining us today, but also some new faces. If I can ask, if possible, if you can just switch on cameras for me. I just want to see the faces, just so that we know that everyone can hear. Everyone is excited to be here with us today. So last year we started with our stage dives, and the purpose of it was to have an opportunity to share some of the things that we've learned at Multimedia over the last 33 years with everyone in the industry. And we're all about creating meaningful connections between brands and people. However, we realized that last year these things weren't fun, so we decided now we want to rebrand, we want to do it a little bit differently, and the purpose of it is to have fun, have conversations, have an opportunity to share things, but also to have conversations amongst each other with how we can do things a little bit differently within our fun yet amazing industry. So just a rundown of how these things work for our new attendees today. We share a little bit about what we've learned over the last 33 years, and then we have something called the coffee date, where we have conversations, people ask questions, I ask some questions, and see how can we start thinking different, start to think different about this industry and make it a bit more fun, a more connecting environment. So what we usually do is I ask people, when we have these glorious events every single day, sometimes twice a week, Multimedia multiple times a day, we ask, if things falls flat, who's to blame? If we are not able to create meaningful connections between our brands and our audience, whose ultimate responsibility is it to deal with those things? And ladies and gentlemen, it is your responsibility. If things falls flat, it is on you. Because meaningful connections are only created through a shared experience. And as event planners, at the end of the day, those shared experiences are our responsibility to create it. And it is our responsibility to communicate the expectations and outcomes to all of our suppliers, whether it's technical, catering, whoever. We need to tell people what we want to see, and oftentimes we don't do that. Why is it that we are clear when we walk into a restaurant? Breakfast. I want my eggs medium with white toast. I'm only spending 150 Rand, but I'm clear with what my expectations are. When I go to have dinner and I have a steak, I'm clear that I want my steak medium rare, and I pay 250 Rand. But when we have events, we are not always clear with people. And that is something that we want to start challenging in this industry. We want to create an environment where people can raise things, say where they want to go with their event, and leave long-lasting impact. So hopefully throughout this session, we'll be able to enable you to move beyond the gimmick of tech. When we started asking people what kind of sessions are they interested in, what they want to see, everyone said, tell me about the newest tech. I want to know about the newest tech. That's the most important thing. But tech is only a tool. It's not a solution. And we need to make the conscious change of how we want to approach our events. Because ladies and gentlemen, we all have the ability to create meaningful connections with our audience, but it comes to us having to take responsibility for where we fall into the system and make sure that the choices that we make leaves long-lasting change. So, tech. Obviously, here at Multimedia, we are known for our technical output. It's what we do every single day. Some people said, dude, are you really going to talk about a gimmick of tech when that is how you guys make money? And I said, yes, it's important for me that money goes to the right things. I hate it when we do events just to do events. Money gets thrown towards a problem and we never solve anything. So, did you know that the best technology doesn't always win? And sometimes human will and ingenuity are able to overcome the best technologies that have been created. And when we think about history, we can see that some advanced technologies have fallen short when we look at human behavior. because oftentimes we don't account for human factors, willpower, adaptability, but most importantly, our ability to connect with each other. So let's rewind. Vietnam. Glorious little war. It was a long conflict that happened in Southeast Asia, and it lasted from 1954 until 1975. 21 years of war. And it was supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be quick. See, the war began when Vietnam split into two. The South was aligned with the US. The North was supported by Russia and China. It was communism versus freedom. And everyone assumed that the US was going to come in and clear everything out real quick. Because the USA had the best technology. They had the best military technology in the world. Firepower of M16 rifles, helicopters, B-52 bombers, and the most advanced artillery at that time. Yet, it took 21 years for them to lose because Vietnam operated with tunnels and booby traps. Things that aren't flashy, aren't as spectacular. Things that we don't always think will make long-lasting difference. See, 21 years of dropping bombs. As Trump would say, the best bombs. But it still failed. Local knowledge and the ability to blend in with people and their environment allowed them to destroy and humiliate millions and millions and millions of dollars spent on advanced military war machines. And it was supposed to be easy. Yet an opponent with limited resources was able to defeat them. Why? Because they had an incredible strategy that no one saw coming. We had things like Operation Rolling Thunder. Just drop bombs on everything. But people hid in their tunnels. We had the Viet Cong completely operating in a different way. They adapted to the terrain. They looked at things differently. They used hit and run tactics where historically everything was out in the open. And they had supply chains that they trusted. No one was able to stop them from receiving their needs. Not their wants. Not their ultimate desires of having helicopters, but their needs to win the war. Because technology without understanding human behavior is ultimately useless. It's not the flashiest weapons, the ultimate technology. It's about strategy and connection. And just like in war, where certain needs comes first, our audience needs are the most important thing. Even though we're in venues, we're safe, we're not in warfare, but we forget about that ultimate need that we need to take to our hearts and enable our audience to win. And this strange thing happens when we're successful with our events, where if something works, we move on. That show comes to an end, and the first response is, how are we going to do it better next year? Not what lessons can we take away from this? How can we enable ourselves to take what we did now and make it better? No, how are we going to do better overall with this thing? And it's a massive mistake, because our responsibility is to listen to our audience, recreate what we did, and repeat it in a way that it does feel novel, because our audience is resonating with it. So when we resonate, it is our responsibility to recreate. And it leads to something that's very important for us here at Multimedia, is event objectives. See, objectives should change, definitely. But the approach to how we deliver a message to someone needs to remain. Our audiences are completely different between different companies and certain groups. And we don't remember the lessons that we've learned. Company A is able to communicate with people in a certain way, and it won't work with company B. So now we look at each other and we want to steal a little bit from each and every single person or every single company. And we fail to actually connect with every single audience on what is important to them. And the strange thing happens that, let's say a a baby. I need to feed a baby. Some days I might feed the baby with a pea puree. Other days I might feed the baby with a carrot puree. But every single day I feed the baby with my little airplane, meow, the exact same way. He knows what to expect. She knows what's coming. They're able to understand what you're trying to do. But if I now go, I get a trebuchet because it's cool and I load it with a hamburger and I shoot the kid in the face, he's not going to know what's going on. Suddenly everything is different and it's scary. And we treat our audiences in the same way. We don't create an environment of safety. We try to impress them with the biggest, flashiest technology, and it falls short. See, ladies and gentlemen, doubt leads to confusion. Confusion leads to fear, and fear leads to no action. So our responsibility as event organizers is looking at an environment where we create a space where people don't have doubt. They understand what's happening. They're not being confused so that they understand what's happening. We're not cultivating a space of fear, and ultimately we want them to go out and take action. Because our brands, businesses aren't spending money on good scones and coffee. No, we ultimately expect some sort of change, some sort of action that needs to be taken. And it comes back to each and every single one of us as event creators needs to take responsibility in that environment to create a space where people are safe. So I want to have a quick chat about the biggest product failure in history. New Coke. So Coke did blind taste tests with various people, and they realized that people prefer Pepsi over Coke. So Coke's response was, well, if people want it sweeter, let's make it sweeter. And it resulted in massive backlash because people cared about the tradition of Coke, the nostalgia of Coke, the emotional connection that they had with Coke. None of that existed between them and Pepsi. And the same applies to us at events. If we blindly follow trends and what's happening out there, we risk ignoring the audience's needs, the things that they actually value. So what does our audience value? People will always give different things and different opinions. And the funniest thing that I've realized over the last few years, reading different things, different research, is that people attend events in the corporate industry. I'm not talking about weddings and stuff like that. In corporate events for two reasons. They either want to do a better job or they want to get a better job. And often at our events, we see that none of those things are actually catered to. It's an opportunity to just data dump, just share something, but it never enables any of those two things. And if we don't do any of those two things, then ultimately we failed as event creators. We fail because we want to show our importance, what matters to us, what fuels our ego. And then when we start rushing those things, we start to look at trends. Oh, I failed giving people what they want, so I'm throwing these different trends, technologies towards them, in the hope that it ultimately does fix our audience experience. And we drown the audience needs with all these different random trends that we hope will fix the entire experiences. But trends don't exist in a random vacuum. They're influenced by things like cultural influences, the progress of tech, how things change, as well as consumer behavior. And when each and every single one of us looks at what we want to do, is our needs more important than that of the audience? Is our cultural influences overtaking that of the audience? Is our opinion about tech overtaking the audiences? Is our consumer behavior overtaking that of our audience? See, ladies and gentlemen, in, the 90s, when people started buying hush puppies in New York City and it became this trend, that didn't influence everyone. It's not important to everyone. Even though that it did become this global trend, it wasn't important to everyone. Let's have a quick look at cultural influence and how we can think about these things to enable our events to be a little bit more special and unique. What's the best cultural influence to refer to? It's obviously food. I love talking about food. I think people will know there's always a space for me to squeeze food into some sort of conversation. And people are like, "Are you a foodie?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a foodie. I'm an eatie. I like consuming food. I necessarily don't care about knowing or making food." So 3 massive impacts in food: sushi, tacos, and pizza. If I ask you what is your favorite, you might say, I like deep fried California rolls, I like beef tacos, and I like a Hawaiian pizza. And then we will argue about it because obviously you are wrong and I am right about my preferences around these things. But the funny thing is, when you start asking people why something is their favorite, they start to think back. Think back to a memory, an emotional connection that happened at a certain point in time. If I need to talk about sushi, I can tell you about the time that my wife and I ate so much sushi at a sushi buffet that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't walk. I fell out of the car onto our driveway laughing because I overdid everything. If I need to talk about tacos, I can tell you about the day that we made a Sunday roast. We had beef, we had chicken, we had mash, and we had those little golden carrots, and we decided to put it on tacos. And I did that with my friend Bryce and Amy. Or I can tell you about the nacho pizza that my wife and I had when we were 21 years old and started dating, and we were at our local bar. The odds of me finding a good nacho pizza this day and age is basically zero. It's not a good pizza. But still, reflecting back on those times, it has something of value to me. It's a cultural influence that's important because of the shared common experience of value. I think that's an important thing that we forget about, is that shared experience of value. Not just the shared experience of, oh, we had a bunch of people inside a venue. No, what's the value that they can discuss? What's the memories that they can share after an event? I don't have favorites because of cultural say-so. You can tell me like this, I most probably won't like it. I have it because the cultural influence, the impact influenced the shared experience that I had with my loved ones. And how do we utilize those shared experiences to leave long-lasting change? Now let's look at consumer behavior. People buy things because other people do, whether they need it or not. And that is a sales fact. People buy things because other people buy it. And how many times do we see something online, a competitor business did something cool, and you're like, oh, I want that, even though it has no actual value. And we misdiagnose why we want certain things. Let's take a look at an air fryer. It's something that we all understand. I know people that have multiple air fryers. And if we look at the technology side of air fryers, do we buy it because of that? Or do we buy it because of what it provides us, what it allows us to do? See, I don't care about the technology side of air fryers. I just care that I can throw a 3-day-old piece of KFC borscht into it, not a wing or a drumstick. No, that gets chowed first while it's fresh. A borscht. I then leave it for 3 minutes and it comes out crisp and mint. That is what I care about. So is our tech that we use at events allowing us to create that crisp KFC piece that we can enjoy and the moment that we can connect? Or are we just using tech because we can justify the use of science and technology? Forcing technology as a trend ignores cultural influences and definitely ignores the audience's behavior. A very easy to understand example is VR. When VR started building up, everyone wanted VR. VR is so cool, we need to get VR. To this day, some people still ask us for VR solutions. The thing is that VR creates isolation. You think you're going to create an opportunity for people to connect. But now where we're in person and we're having conversations, suddenly I'm removing myself out of that. I'm putting these glasses on and I'm experiencing this thing on my own. There is no shared experience. And event creators want VR so that they can say they have VR, even though the people that actually need to use it hates it. How many times do we fail our audience because of our wants, needs, and desires and not looking at what they want and what they need to achieve? Just because something is new doesn't mean it's the right tool for our audience. So, what is a gimmick? It's a novel feature, stunt, or promotion that doesn't provide long-lasting value. So, when we have events and we participate in different discussions and things that we want to achieve, ask yourself, will this decision that we're making now have long-lasting value? The funny thing is, when gimmicks work, they definitely boosts your brand visibility, and they do create quick engagement. It's fantastic at that moment in time, but they don't align with the audience's long-term needs, and they end up failing. We need to think about behavior change. Gimmicks do encourage action in a small amount of time if it makes sense to the audience, but it definitely doesn't deliver on long-term sustainable change. I don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning because of my Apple Watch. I get up and go and run because I want to live a longer, healthier life. My Apple Watch just allows me to see how everything played out. It's a different kind of tool. Now, a simple fly sticker in a urinal reduces splashback by 80%. Why? Because men aim at the sticker. The funny thing is, the moment they take the sticker away, the change automatically disappears. Suddenly, everything is a urinal, and it's quite barbaric. I'm sorry for the gentleman on this call. But it is the thing. We can see how these gimmicks don't lead to long-lasting change. Event technology is a tool. It is not the solution. If you treat it like a solution, then you're focusing on gimmicks. You're not looking at the long-lasting change. Your audience's needs should shape every single thing that we do. And trends are driven by culture and consumers, and not just by the tech. Gimmicks can work if they have purpose and a long-term plan for sustained action. So when we talk about these event objectives, I always tell people, okay, cool, sweet. Now we have an objective. We have a piece of technology that we need to complete the messaging with, something that we need to achieve. But what's the long-lasting impact? What's the golden thread that's supposed to run through all your events? Not just a single snapshot in time, because we're not communicating the same things over and over and over for long-term change. So now we create an experience for entertainment that's fun in the moment. And 2 days later, everything we communicate falls flat. So when we approach these things, ask yourself, what's the long-lasting impact? And what am I going to do from my side, from my business side, to ensure that the message runs through everything and people don't forget about it? So the next time someone pitches you a fancy piece of tech, or you want the latest shiny object for your event, ask yourself, does this actually help me connect with my audience? Does it actually engage them? Does it actually provide an opportunity to learn? Or is it just a gimmick for that snapshot in time? Real change at events comes from understanding people, not just using the latest, coolest tech. So I have 4 basic steps that you can follow to ensure that you keep focused on the things that actually matter to your audience. Firstly is we need to ask ourselves, what are our event objectives? What behavior change do we actually need to create? If I ask you what's your event objective and you tell me to have fun, I'm going to be like, ladies and gentlemen, we're not spending thousands and millions of rands to have fun. We have a message. Our CEOs, CFOs, CMOs have an expectation from us to deliver a specific message and leave long-lasting change. What's that message? What are we actually trying to achieve? And when we understand what we need to achieve, we need to understand what behavior change are we ultimately going to create through that. And when we're able to do that, then we can ask ourselves, okay, step 2. How do we get people to care? How do we get people to believe? How do we tell them what they need to know? And how do we tell them what they need to do? At events, we are fantastic at telling people what they need to know. We walk onto stage, we tell them X, Y, and Z, that is it, cool, move on swiftly. People leave, they don't really remember anything, and it's in the one ear, out the other. It's our responsibility to create an emotional connection with our audience based on those objectives, because they don't care about your objectives. They just want to do a better job or get a better job. So we need to show up in a way that creates that reason to care. When we have a reason to care, we then need to give them a reason to believe. Why should I take these steps? Why should I listen to the speaker, to you, your CEO, CFO, CMO? Then we tell them what they need to do. What they need to know. The thing that we're already doing quite well. Know this, done. But then ultimately we need to give them an action plan. What do they need to do? Because if they leave knowing what they need to know, it still doesn't mean that they know what they actually need to do. Then step 3 is use cultural impact. Create shared experiences that have meaning. My purpose in life is to help people color in the meaning. It's one of the most special things that we have. It's what makes us human at the end of the day. It's the thing that makes us being able to connect with each other. Because we can have purpose, we can have visions and missions and all of those things. But if it doesn't have meaning, there's no emotional connection. And then if there's no emotional connection, there's no reason for someone to get up after an event and go and actually get some shit done. Then step 4, which technology is the best tool for the job? Now we're only talking about technology. We decide what technology we want to use when we know what we want to achieve. It's not the best tool to inflate your ego. It's the best tool to achieve your objectives. It's the best tool to leave long-lasting impact and the best tool to create emotional connections between your brand and your audience. I've been to massive events over the 15 years that I've been in the industry with big screens, lighting, pyros, cameras, and I left with no value whatsoever. It's just flash. It's money wasted. But I've also been to events that is an MS Teams meeting or an event in a small hotel room with a data pack and one projector. And I left with my life changed. I left with an idea. I know what I had to do. And that only happens because the event organizers prioritized my needs over gimmicks.